First to pose, he won the Super Heavyweight Championship in the USA in 2003. He won the Super Heavyweight Championship in 2004, but did not get the pro card. He's back at the Nationals, seeing it third time's a charm. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Cook.
Hi, and welcome to episode 54 of the Muscle News and Merlin Bodybuilding Podcast with my buddy Eric Brozer and our special guest, Chris Cook, IFBB Pro, and hopefully making a comeback in another year almost. What do you think, Chris?
It's in process. Let's do this. Why not?
Yeah.
What's the downside, right?
That's exciting, bro. I mean, I didn't even know you were thinking about that. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with the bodybuilding mentality is it's not a what do you call it, a dimmer switch, right? It's either on or off. And when I started training again, your body starts to respond, and you kind of start to remember those pumps.
Yeah.
And then if I'm gonna lean in, well, shoot. Maybe I've got some equity left over. Why not? What's like I said, what's the downside?
Nothing.
No, as long as you enjoy it and you're healthy,
yeah,
there's no downside really,
Yeah.
So,
well, obviously the enjoyment is there. It's a passion. I mean, I think for all of us, bodybuilding has just got a rhythm inside of our ecosystem that is kind of innate almost. We just love that process of building and shaping and seeing the progress. On the risk side, it's interesting because on one side, I don't have anything to lose because I'm not necessarily building a career per se. So you have that ease of the process. But on the other side is I have a family, obviously, and as you get older, you become a little bit more aware of your mortality.
sure.
And longevity is an issue, right? So you don't want to get hurt when you're training because you just don't want to walk around with a limp. And then on the chem side, the health and wellness side, you want to be smart. So with all that in mind, that's all the things that we're doing. Is there a little bit of risk that sure, look, as you click up your testosterone and introduce, higher than normal type of hormones and things in order to get your body to respond, you just never know truly how it'll react. But at the same time, I'm not the kind of guy that throws grams of this stuff at myself to see how it's going to go. That's not how I work,
Yeah, no, I'm sure, like you said, your approach when you're younger, you maybe don't have a family, and maybe the only thing in the world to you is that next bodybuilding title. Your mentality is one thing. You're like, I'll do anything it takes to get there. You don't think about things. When you get older, you have a family, you have responsibilities, you have other things. You have to think a little bit more intelligently about it and say, well, I'm going to take some risk. I understand that, but I'm not just going to throw caution to the wind and just destroy my body. And obviously you know how to take care of yourself. You know how to monitor yourself. You know what your body needs. And you also probably back in the day, we might even discuss this. Back in the day, I think there was more of a reliance on training and diet. And now it's kind of gone a little bit more the way of relying a little bit more on the PEDs, and not as much on the training and diet. And you're in the old school, so like you know how much progress you can make just from proper training and proper diet. So,
Yeah, and I've taken the exact same approach, and even on the chem side, it's funny. I think just to be transparent, right? I think like nowadays, speaking about a gram of test is a pretty low kind of starter range. Whereas for me, previous to my retirement, I'd never gone to a gram of test ever, and not because I was trying to be overly cautious, but at the pace that I was succeeding and winning, and growing, of course, with that, as I just didn't think it was necessary. If I continue to do new levels of shows and I continue to win, right, and maybe not win the show the first time, but then my first pro show is a top 6, right, and arguably could have been higher, and we can get into that, but I did that on 750 milligrams of testosterone, and that's not a joke. It's not me being ultra conservative for the sake of conversation. It's just the dead truth. I mean, Chris Aceto and even Hani Rambod and the people that I worked with in those years would attest to that. We were very cautious, and it worked. So I'm taking that same approach now. As I'm easing into it, because I just want to see how my body's going to react, right? And if things begin to go sideways for whatever reason, then I'll just pull back. It's not, like I said, I'm not trying to build a career per se.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, very cool. So Kevin,
Chris, so we get start a bit on your career. Obviously, you did some smaller shows before 1997. I mean, I was looking at Wikipedia. Mr. Anchorage, you won the first overall. Mr. Alaska, you came fourth, and then you started, getting into it. You did the Emerald Cup. You placed second in juniors, and then in the nationals, you started with the nationals. You got the first time. All right, you didn't place, but in 2002, you placed third in the super heavyweight, right? Is that correct? Because sometimes and in 2003, you placed first, but you didn't get the overall.
Yeah, so the first time I went to nationals was in 2000. I had won the Sacramento heavyweight division, and it qualified me. And I would think I weighed in at the time at a whopping around 220, give or take. And it qualified me for nationals. And this was my first time working with Hani, and I was just excited about it. And I thought, I'd kind of brought myself to a level of tightness that I'd never experienced previous to that. And I thought, why don't I give this a shot? And Hani had advised me not to go because though I was a heavyweight, my frame was not. My frame was a super heavyweight, and I needed to put on a lot more muscle in order to fill it out. But it's a very relative thing, and when you show up at nationals, of course, that reality, backstage warming up, and everyone begins to take their stuff off, and you're like, oh my, I may have
on too early.
Yeah. And so I didn't qualify top 15. And Hani was like, told you. And I'm like, yeah, well, it was a good experience.
Yeah.
So then, I went from there, and then I didn't compete, I think, until 2002.
2002, the California Championships.
Yeah, did the Cal. Yeah. And I, we were, the interesting thing about my career is every time we did these shows, it was an elevation, like a whole new person, because I was growing at a pretty rapid rate. So here I was showing up at the Cal, I think at around 230 or 235 on stage, and trying to manage how to get dry was difficult. And so I ended up losing to Omar Deckard and Jerome Ferguson.
Yeah.
And I was not, and those two guys, by the way, just on the personal level, that they're phenomenal human beings. I love those guys. They're really, really good people. But on the competitive side, I was just like, you got to be kidding me. I felt that I had a package that could sweep that. And because I didn't, I was like, okay, I'm literally not stepping on stage until I can win the nationals, till I have the caliber to do that. And so Hani and I went to work and kind of hunkered down big time. And then July of '03 is when we showed up for the USA. And it was funny. I was training with Bob Ciccarillo and Tom Prince in Golds, and they were my training partners. And I was, you know, I was like, look, I'm winning this show. And it's funny because, you know, no one back then would show up the first time in the USA and win it. That's just not how it worked. And so I was just like, well, I'm going to change the face of this. Idris Wardell had won it in the previous year. A guy named Alan Grimes took second to him. And, you know, back then it was like, if you took second, obviously you brought a package similar to that, it would seem appropriate that he would probably win the division. But Alan trained at Gold's Gym, so we were training there together every day, right? Seeing each other, pulling each other, you know, like seeing each other pose, and it was a big buildup. And Alan ended up not placing, I don't think, top 5, but I ended up winning that super heavyweight.
2003.
Yeah.
Alan placed 4th.
Oh, did he? Okay.
We're talking super heavyweight, not overall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eric Fromm placed 3rd. Dave Palumbo placed 2nd. and you placed 1st. Just to show, you know, the viewers, you know, because today pro cards are being thrown out like at people, you know, like you know, Cracker Jack, you know, gifts. Look at this. So Chris won the super heavyweight. Look at all the competitors. All right. And you didn't get your pro card that day, right?
No, I ended up getting beat in the overall.
Probably today, the top 5 will get a pro card here. And then you have the heavyweight, right? You have the light heavyweight. Then you got the middle, then you got the lightweight and bantamweight. And only one guy gets the pro card. Look how difficult it is.
And that day it was Richard Jones. And Richard, in fact, maybe you could click on Richard there. I'm not sure. Richard, you know, Richard was quite a bit older. I mean, I was 26 at this show. And Richard, I think, was like 33 or 34. You know, obviously a lot smaller person, but very, very well. He looked like a miniature Flex Wheeler.
Just he had a beautiful physique.
It
was put together really well. And you know, obviously I was disappointed. I was a little mad that he won, but looking back, you know, look at it. I mean,
fantastic.
You know, the maturity of his physique at that level, at the national level, that's a really nice physique, man.
That's stunning.
Yeah, what a photo by Perbanal. But yeah, you know, and you know, of course, it was like, well, you know, we didn't get it, had to go back to the drawing board, and then we showed up at the USA in '04, obviously, to try to finally win it. And you know, we just we couldn't get the carb up right on that '04 one. The
USA's, right?
USA again, and I was having stomach issues with bloat, and it was just really weird. We were trying to use yams to carb up with, and I think I discovered later that yams just had too much fiber for my system, and so I would for every half inch of fill that I would get, you know, an inch of bloat in my abdomen. And so later on, I began to use a lot more simple sugar type of things to carb up with, to make the abdominal area and just honestly the ability to get in the carbs, because I'd be so dry. But yeah, so then from there we had to go on to the nationals in that next November of '06 to finally get it right.
Yeah. Wait.
So how much were you weighing now about this time when you were competing?
Yeah.
So I weighed at the USA '03. I came in at 42, I believe it was. And then I came in the next year at around 48. And then nationals, I actually weighed in at 46. but I was much drier at nationals in '04. So, you know, I came in probably 6 pounds heavier the next year for the USA, but wasn't super tight. So if I'd have been tight, I probably would have been down probably the same weight, give or take. And then that next November for the nationals, you know, working with Chris Aceto, we took very extreme measures to get my water down and finally get crisp enough to win that, you know, to beat the smaller guys. That was the challenge, right? Being a bigger guy, you know, and young. That's the other thing I recognize now is youth plays against you in these early, you know, in those years when you're trying to get hard, right? Because that density and that just thin skin doesn't work for you as well as, of course, the older guys. Like when you look at that of Richard Jones, that picture of him, his skin, you can tell it's just an older man, more mature.
And
Yeah.
How tall are you? How tall are you, Chris?
Well, back then I was 5'11".
Are you shorter now?
Yeah, man, I'm a lot shorter.
Gravity.
I'm like, yeah, under 5'10" now. I literally, I'm baffled. You know, it's not something you really pay attention to. And then I went to the doctor not long ago, and she's like, "Yeah, you're like 5'9.5". I'm like, no. Like, what are you talking
How
about?
could that be?
Yeah. So, yeah, age, man, does
Yeah,
it to you.
gravity, spine just kind of.
Yeah.
so
It doesn't help. We pick up a lot of heavy weights, of course.
yeah.
You know.
Absolutely.
Eric, I'm going to continue a bit on the career side thing, and then we'll.
No, go. I want to
And
learn more
so
about
then
Chris.
you turned pro, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you did 2 years competing. You did the New York Pro. You placed 6th.
Yeah.
Toronto, placed 10th. 2006 Arnold Classic 15th. Ironman 10th. San Francisco Pro 12th. And then you said that's it. So,
Yeah.
But Chris, before you go there, but when you came to the sport, I remember there was a lot of hoopla around
yeah,
it.
I was
Like
going
when
to get
you
up. Yeah.
turn, oh, okay. When you turn pro, it was like Golden Boy, Chris Cook, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
the Great White Hope, whatever you want to
Yeah.
say.
Chris, when I was
Yeah.
doing a bit of research on you, back then, obviously you were like Eric said, the golden boy, the new guy, like, you know, Joe Weider finally had another guy for the covers, you know what I mean? You
Yeah.
had that look. Um, Obviously you had sponsorships and
Yeah.
endorsements when you were an amateur, right?
Yeah.
So,
I was in fact the first I was the first Weider publication amateur contracted athlete. So
wow.
previous to that, Weider would only contract for publication, you know, exclusive publication stuff with professionals. But Peter McGuff and we hit it off really well in 2003. And I had come into the show. I'd already been sponsored by a couple of years by a company called MRM, Metabolic Response Modifiers.
I remember that.
Yeah, that's post '03 USA, like the day after. Yeah, when Peter and I, you know, began to get to just meet each other and get friendly, etc. You know, we just hit it off really well. I think philosophically, as well as just personality wise, and my objective in the career and what I was looking to try to do and achieve, and who who my kind of target audience was, if you will. You know, I did have the desire to compete with the large, you know, to be big. I wanted to be big and muscular, and my frame could manage that in a way to where I just didn't look, you know, blocky and you know, square, if you will. So it worked. And of course, you know, I bleached my hair blonde and played very heavily into the whole California boy look, which at the time, from a marketing perspective, the truth of the matter is the sport was very dominated by a lot of black guys, both at the Olympia level as well as even at national level. And nothing to say about, I mean, obviously they were dominating because their bodies are amazing, right? I mean, they have a, they have a tendency towards symmetry and that a lot of white men kind of miss when they get into the bigger frames. And so because I was able to compete at that level as a white guy from a marketing perspective, it was a bit of an anomaly. You only had a few. You had Gunter, you had Jay, you had myself. You know, you did have Craig Titus, but he had put himself, of course, in a category because of who he was, kind of that bad boy, right? So a lot of people stayed away from him. But nonetheless, that was the key behind the whole push, you know. And I was all in. Don't mistake. I thoroughly enjoyed and loved the sport. I didn't quit because I was sick. I didn't quit because I hated the sport. It was purely a decision about having children and looking to the future and recognizing that at the time I couldn't find a solution to have both. And you know, and it wasn't an easy decision. I actually came around to trying to make that decision after the New York Pro. So after my first pro show, well, and the Toronto came with it, is when I got tested, and I kept getting tested trying to see how my body could produce sperm, and it just would not while I was on testosterone. And that was just everybody has their thing, you know. Some guys get gynecomastia or lose their hair or whatever the case. And my issue was my testes would just stop producing sperm. So it was evident that I would need to make a long-term change if that was really something I was serious about.
And having those endorsements and you know, sponsorships, and you're, you know, one of Weider's top guys, did it work against you or in your favor, do you think, when it came to competition? Was there like people talking like, how did this guy get all this stuff when he's an amateur and I'm a seasoned pro and I don't even have these, you know? Did it
For the most part, everyone was pretty friendly. There were a couple of guys. And I'm good buddies with them now, so there's no need to kind of rehash.
No.
I don't want to create
just curious,
problems,
you know, because
there were a couple of guys that were grumbly about it because they were just like, you know, and these were we'll say top 5 in the world guys, right? And that created a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, in fact, right? Because obviously when you're looking at yourself, you know, look, I was one of the hardest training guys in Venice, period. Venice was not in that era, so we'll call it 99 to 06 timeframe, was not known for being hardcore training crazy, right? The David Paul and the Paul brothers and those the Barbarians and all those back in the day, that era had kind of gone, and which was the crazy weight type of stuff. And so I trained hard. I was very focused. I didn't party. I never drank. There was no riffraff in my life. And so I took it very, very seriously. And so whenever I had that kind of negative view or like kind of an undeserving perspective, I got pretty defensive about it, and I wasn't happy. But as far as a focus goes, I mean, obviously I was making 150K plus before I was even a pro through between Weider and MRM. They did a joint venture agreement with me, which was also the first, because Weider, you were either all Weider or not.
Yeah.
And this is after the company was sold to I just had their name in my head and it just went away. But when the magazine and Weider Publications was sold, then that gave them
David Pecker. Was that the David Pecker?
Yeah, Dave, exactly. Yeah. And that opened up the ability to do more and expand in their normal proceeds. So I was from a publications perspective, I was a dedicated Weider athlete, but from a nutrition, perspective, as I was an MRM athlete.
Wow.
And it was great. It worked out really well.
Wow. So you were, I mean, so you were quite successful financially, even before
big
you
money back then,
turned
huh?
pro. I mean, back then, 150K is a lot of money, a lot.
Oh, it was. Yeah. And then I'll tell you something interesting about that is you know, we're all in the same game at that point, right? We're all wanting endorsements. We're all trying to figure out how to monetize this thing that we're so passionate about, and very few are really able to do it, right?
Of course.
And so when that money began to come in, I recognized that it was short, right? That or potentially short-lived. I didn't know how long it would be around. And so I never stopped working. My wife and I, you know, we eventually got into gym management, gym ownership, and we never stopped working ever. So I was training clients when I was at the peak of my career, and on every magazine cover, I was still charging, you know, 150, 100 to $200 an hour to train folks. Because the way I saw it was, you maintain your productivity, it keeps your schedule upright. You don't get lazy. You also don't get in trouble. I saw these guys without jobs, et cetera, kind of getting themselves in trouble because they have too much time on their hands.
Yeah.
And so then I was making all this ancillary income doing that as well, like cash. And then I was leaving every weekend as well. You know, very famously, I think Jay Cutler once quoted, and I agreed completely. It's like you leave pissed off on Friday because you hate to travel at this point, but you come back pretty happy because you got, you know, somewhere between $8,000 to $10,000 cash in your bag coming home. And so I just was stockpiling cash. And that was the kind of call it the, you know, the non-accountable aspect of the income in the sport that was really, really, really fruitful. And that's what gave me the ability to make a transition out of the sport whenever I decided to go kind of into corporate. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And you're one of the guys, and I think you might have been one of the guys that was lucky to take advantage of, you know, the fall of the WBF. You remember, because that was in like 91, 92, right, Chris? So when
Yeah, that was
so
a
the
number of
Weiders,
years.
yeah, so the Weiders opened their eyes and they said we better sign these guys, you know, and that worked in your favor. You know, you're one of the guys that really worked in your favor. So if they had a good athlete, they would tie them down, you know. Um,
Yeah, that was a number of years. I mean, that was pretty early for me. I
91,
mean, I
92.
came in,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I
You
came
were
in,
just starting.
you know,
Yeah.
probably 6, 7 years later than that really is when I started began to, you know, make my push. But you know, there's a lot of dynamics that go into the rise of an athlete like this, and timing has a lot to do with that. And I'll give you an example. Dave Palumbo took second behind me in the 2003 USA. And this is back when getbig.com and these boards really began, that they got really popular. It's before social media. And I tell you, Dave's fan base was massive because Dave had been around for such a
Yeah.
long time. And not only been around, but he's a force. I mean, I don't know if you guys ever had the opportunity, but back in like the first time I saw Dave was at the Emerald Cup in 97. And he was there not to compete. He was there at, I think it was, man, I forget which nutrition company he was with at the time, but he would walk around with a string tank top and these short little shorts on, of course, crunch socks and Atomics shoes,
Freak.
but absolutely show ready right there, right? Just like shredded glutes. I mean, the guy was an absolute freak. And I could not believe, I mean, my eyes, it was very difficult for me to believe that my physique could ever come, yeah, exactly. Like even remotely close just from a muscularity perspective of Dave back then.
Yeah, he was crazy.
And yet in David, when he competed against me in 03 was not his best. If you pull up a picture from that, it's like he was still big, but he had kind of outgrown, his muscularity began to decline, but his gut, his abdomen, and that kind of stuff began to increase, or at least that became what it appeared to happen. So it was not the best Dave Palumbo. Dave Palumbo's best was probably 3 or 4 or 5 years before that, late 90s, when, you know, we're talking about some of the biggest names in the sport were turning pro. And so he had lined up against some really, really heavy guys at his best that didn't give him the opportunity to turn pro. And then, of course,
Yeah,
I
good for
just
him.
happened to show up and be just good enough
Yeah.
to be able to edge him out there. And it was a pretty big controversy. Now, interestingly enough, I was just reading a thing the other day. I didn't realize that was the highest level he had ever placed in a national level contest was 03.
He had a hard. He never got his pro card. I mean,
Yeah.
he's one of the guys that he's still one of the most popular guys in the industry, and he didn't turn pro. I mean, it's like Bob Chicorello. I don't know how many years he did, 11, 12 years trying to get his pro card, you know.
Yeah, it took him forever. I remember when he finally did. I think it was in the O two US. No, sorry. 2001 USA, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And everyone was like, Bob Chico, like finally this guy, had won it. And then he actually went on and actually had a
2000.
relatively okay pro career. He didn't do bad,
Top 10 guy,
Yeah, yeah,
and then he
yeah.
won the Masters Pro World in 2006. But
Yeah, and he finally, and which is great for him. I'm glad he did that. But yeah, it's the sport is brutal like that from a timing perspective. I mean, imagine any of us having to be in the 91 USA when Flex Wheeler shows up,
yeah,
right?
or Kevin
I mean,
LeBron, or
Chris Cormier, Kevin
course.
LeBron. I mean, the
yeah,
names were
well,
insane.
Cormier was 92, right?
Yeah.
So then it's like forget it.
Yeah,
Like who's gonna beat that, right? And
yeah.
yeah.
Today, the athletes have no idea what it means to have a pro card, to win a pro card. Today, I placed top 5, I got it. You don't even have to do the overalls, you get your pro card. I mean, back then, even, there's 2 pros, 3 a year max, some used to go
Yeah.
to the world championships to get their, win the overall there and get the pro card as well, so,
Yeah. I was working with a client of mine, actually. He was a really good friend of mine, an ex F-18 fighter pilot.
wow.
He's older now. He's like 60 and decided to do a show for the first time. And so him and his girlfriend did it. And I just helped them get ready. And they show up and now this was not NPC, but nonetheless, it was an all natural sanction. And
Great. Yeah.
his girlfriend, first time him, she literally, and not to degrade her, but walking around those little heels and trying to be sexy as they need to in those bikinis.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of practice for those girls to get it right. Anyway, she could barely do it, and she turned pro that night. And I was like, you what? Like,
Yeah.
because it made no sense to me, right? This is a 10-year journey for all of us, but that's how the sport has changed.
But
I don't know what to make of it.
It's called being a business. I mean,
yeah,
it's a business
but the
more than
thing is,
anything.
Chris, let's say 2 years ago I counted all the pros from the NPCs. I went and counted every pro that won that year. There was over 1,200. But from those 1,200, all right, the majority are a lot of women and men's physique and stuff. But how many men bodybuilders actually compete? They win their card. They'll say, "I'll take 2 years off and come back bigger," and so they disappear. That's
Right.
it. Life gets in the way. They don't get the momentum. Doesn't keep going. And it just they just disappear. What do you think, Eric?
Well, I mean, back in the day, like when Chris was talking about it, and even earlier than Chris, back in the days of the Wheeler and the Cormiers and Mike Francois and all those guys. I mean, the top 6 or 7 at shows were all Olympia
They were
caliber
ready.
athletes.
Yeah, they were ready.
And
Yeah.
they were ready to literally turn pro and then walk.
Yeah.
I mean, look
Yeah.
at Flex Wheeler. He turned pro and just bang, bang. I mean, was beating the best guys in the world.
Yeah.
Right off the,
It's
so
a
I mean, it's
process.
a completely different sport.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at, I mean, and I'm not trying to criticize or disparage the sport now, but like
No.
you look at the nationals now, you look at the USA now, and it's not the lineups that it used to be where it was just like the top 7, 8 guys, and then it would be like year by year, each one of those guys would be turning pro, just taking their turns.
Yeah.
But there would only be one. I mean, it's amazing, Chris, that you won the nationals, but didn't win the overall, and therefore didn't turn pro.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's like what, top 2
No,
in
it's
every
more.
class, or
Top
something
5,
like that. I
think.
mean,
Yeah.
a completely different animal. So you guys pretty much when you guys won the USA Nationals, you were ready to step on a pro stage. It's not the same
Yeah.
these
Yeah, I
days.
think Milos had pointed that out. We were on, it was on Chris Tuttle's show, and we were talking through that a little bit. And where though the disappointment of losing in '03 and then losing in '04, I mean, I won my class, but losing the overall, the benefit was that by the time I won the nationals in November of '04, I was ready, and I did. I went right into those next, I was competing by May of that next year, in '05. And so, and I took a top, it's funny. So in that show, I placed sixth, and I was pissed because top five qualified for the Olympia at the time.
Yeah.
And I wanted, of course, as a rookie, you want that little check the box. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so Steve Weinberger and Mr. Mannion they came to me literally backstage right after the show because they could see I was not happy. So, and they said, look, they told me, look, you need to relax. And we purposely weren't going to let you qualify for the Olympia. And I was like, why would you do that to me? And they're like, because we know you do it. And I said, well, yeah, of course I'll do it. Right. And he said, we want you to heal up and be prepared. You're going to have a very long career. In fact, Steve said, look, you're going to be Mr. Olympia one day. You need to let your body heal. And you've been doing show after show after show, kind of, because I was always just had the feeling of being behind and needing to go quicker for whatever reason. And now looking back, of course, recognize that it would have suited me well to be a little bit slower in process and let my body mature.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, that was the process, and having a physique ready to compete at that higher level. And those next shows, then in '06, when we talk about, and I end up placing 15 at the Arnold. Well, the really crappy thing about that was I had pneumonia, and we didn't realize it till the week of the show. It was walking pneumonia, and that's a really weird illness because you'll get it and not know what the hell. It's not like you're dying sick, right? You're just, something's not right. You're, maybe a little bit of a cough or that kind of thing. And then you get tested. And so now you have to decide, okay, well, do we try to tackle with antibiotics, or do we just try to hang tight, right? And try to bring us in. But either way, either choice was going to create a result that wasn't the best, right? And I ended up weighing on stage, I think at the Arnold, at 270, like 6 pounds or something. Because I was pretty watery, I should have been like probably 60, 65 or something like that. Just as a result. But that's how the cookie crumbles.
You said an important point there that you said. I really like it because you said that Mannion and Weinberger, they decided that you weren't ready, like, for the Olympia, and they made sure you didn't, not made sure, but they preferred
Yeah.
you didn't go that year, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
living in Europe, there was that, I mean, not to be controversial, but there was that split in 2017. I think you know about it. There was the, Rafael Santonia split from Mannion, and, there was a lot of criticism in Europe that they don't let people win their pro cards. And I always argued, because I'm involved, I take photos at competitions, and I'm really involved in the IFBB in Europe as well. I'm really close with them, and the thing is, because I asked many presidents around, because they have presidents in each country. It's not that
Yeah.
you don't deserve there's that thing, you win, you're in,
Yeah.
when you're. They used to have like 6 competitors, the level wouldn't be so high, right? At a contest, it would be an off year, for example. And the guy wins the national championships in that country. And they'll say, give me my pro card. And they'll say, no, we're not going to give it to you because you're not ready. And they'll say,
Yeah.
like, oh, this is not fair. You guys are doing it. But they would tell them, listen, there's the world championships or the European championships. We'll pay your flight there.
Yeah.
You place in the top 5 in your category, and there'll be like 50 guys in that category. We'll give you your pro card. What happens to
Yeah.
the guy? Dead last. you
Yeah.
know? So you're not ready. They're doing them a
Yeah.
favor. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Why should they make like laugh at a guy, I'm a pro, and they go do a pro show. So there's a process, people that, I mean, if you don't deserve a pro card, I mean, there's nothing wrong with like Steve Weinberg or Romanian saying, listen, okay, you won, but don't turn pro this year.
Yeah.
Try it
But they're
again.
not, but to me, Kevin, it seems like it's the opposite now of what Chris is talking about.
Yeah, it's like
Now
here.
everybody, they let everybody turn pro.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they let them win and go into whatever show they want to. So
yeah.
I mean, and in a way, in some ways, when you look at it, it's more fair that way, because if you deserve to win
No,
and if you
you
qualify for something,
you
you
won it.
deserve to go. Like Chris, if in a way, I understand what they were saying, but in a way, if you deserve to be in the top five at that show, then
Yeah,
you deserve
okay.
to be in the top five, and
Yeah,
then you
yeah,
can make the choice whether to
Yeah.
go to the Olympia or
yeah,
not.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's
That's
Yeah.
kind of,
true.
but I also understand from the perspective of looking at the athlete and saying, we want you this or that, we see your career way along. But
Yeah.
today, I don't think that that's a
No,
concern at all. Now I think it's
I
just
mean,
basically like pro card, pro card, pro card, pro
yeah,
card, whether you're ready or not, just boom, boom,
yeah.
boom,
I
rather than trying to hold a
Yeah.
standard
I
of
I
some
have
kind of thing.
friends that have like 15 pro cards and they won't turn pro. Why? Because they're stuck at, I mean, I'm with kilos, 85, 90 kilos. What is that in pounds? I don't know.
Probably
Yeah.
200 and
Little over
210.
200. Yeah.
Yeah. So they just prefer to win prestigious titles as an amateur. I mean, it's like, not everybody, not, it's like that, but they made that decision. It's not like they were eligible to turn pro, but they made that decision. You know what I mean? I think for like
Yeah.
what Eric said, it would have been better they gave you fifth place, right? And then after the show, they speak to you, say, listen, we think you shouldn't do the Olympia, but it's up to you. You know what I mean? So
But
Yeah.
isn't it
I
interesting, Kevin, that you and I have talked about this before? Like a lot of times you see somebody wins a pro show and a lot of athletes will discourage them. Don't do the Olympia yet. Don't do it. You're
yeah,
not
yeah,
ready. And I always say, and I don't know, Chris, you can give your opinion. I always say, like, you don't. Okay, so everybody wants to compete in the Olympia. I mean, that's a dream to just stand on the stage. I mean, let
Of
alone win,
course.
but I mean, just to stand on the stage.
yeah, yeah.
And like I say, when I see somebody like win a show and hey, I'm going to go to the Olympia, even though they know they're not placing top six, maybe not top eight, maybe not even top 10, but they want to stand on that stage. And I say go, because you
Yeah,
never know what's going to happen that year. God forbid you get into an accident. God forbid you get an illness. God forbid something sidetracks you
yeah.
and then you never get that chance again. So I kind of like encourage people, like if they want to go to that show even before, you don't have to go to the Olympia and necessarily win. I mean, if you're on
No,
that stage, you are one of the best bodybuilders
of
in the
course.
world, and you
Yeah,
should be proud of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just feel like you shouldn't be discouraged from going, because you don't know what life has in store.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I think it's a tricky conversation, right? Because it's, I don't think anyone would disagree with you that we're talking about very high level macro perspective on life, and so everything you're saying, Eric, applies to that. I mean, these are conversations that we have with our children at the end of life type of stuff, right? It's like you never want to leave those, what ifs. You want
yeah,
to
yeah.
you want to go for it in life, and I'm a true believer in that, and for the most part, I think I have. Um, but yet there's this other side, at least for where I was then. Then I was pissed because I wanted the youth in me and that drive, the machine wanted these accolades of being one of the youngest and earliest. And, I wanted that process to be very straight up. But looking back now, man, the wisdom and honestly, the love that Jim and Steve were giving me, and I wasn't wise enough to really absorb it and understand it. Like I couldn't settle down enough to hear the music, if you will. I was still in such a hurry, and yeah, I ended up not competing. I ended up competing the next round of shows, those next February, back in the Ironman and Arnold and San Francisco, and I really had no business doing that. And that's why my body got sick. I was wearing out, and they knew that. Um, so, I liken this stuff now that I'm a dad, right? And Eric, you have kids?
No, actually
You
don't.
don't have kids. Okay. Well, I know Kevin does. And like, there's the hardship of discipline is not born by the child. It's born by the parent. And it's funny because I actually think it was harder for Steve and for Jim to come to me and tell me that than for me to hear it, to be truthful,
Yeah.
because they know they can see the broader picture. They wanted me to be as much of a champion as I did, actually, but they would have been smarter in how I would have executed. And if I'd have listened, I probably could have figured it out. But it's just one of those balanced things. It's being an athlete. There's a process to becoming the best in the world. And look, you do have the anomalies of the world, right? Like the Bo Jacksons or whoever who have just like an ability, the Flex Wheelers of the world that come in right off the bat and have a physique ready to compete at the highest level. I think so. He turned pro July of 91, and then it would have been in
Didn't he? It was 91. I thought he turned it pro 92.
Let me check.
Because 93 was his first pro year.
Maybe my years are messed up, but the point is, he won the Arnold in 93, didn't he?
He won the Ironman, then he went to the Arnold, and then he was second at the Olympia.
In
all in 1 year.
92, he turned pro at the USA's.
There it is. Yeah.
And then 93, Arnold Classic, he won. Second in England. First in France. First in Germany. First at the Ironman and second at the Olympia.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for Dorian Yates showing up like a freak in 93, he would have been Mr. Olympia.
Yeah. So, my point is a very, very few. I mean, this is like, I don't know that bodybuilding will ever see a physique like Flex Wheelers ever again. Same with Ronnie Coleman, right? But because these are once in a century type of, I think, anomalies. Yeah. But nonetheless, for us more mortal people of the world, there's a process, and you see these top level athletes in all sports go through a process of maturing, and it's funny. I have a 16-year-old son who plays soccer at a really, really high level. He's a phenomenal talent. He had his pro debut when he was 14 years old, and the kid is so worried and stressed about trying to hit these markers just like his dad. And I'm on the back end trying to, keeping the reins tight on going, bud, slow down. Like, we don't need to hit all those accolades, right? We're looking to the future, when you're 25, 26, 28, and we got to keep you healthy, right? But that's the angst of a young man. And that's why being surrounded by a good team of people that are wise and that have your best interest in heart are really important.
Yeah, mentors who've been there and done that and can give you the experience and really wisdom that they don't have. And that's why I was saying I don't say anything bad about Steve Weinberg or Mannion for telling you that, because they had your best interests at heart, and they were seeing the future.
I mean,
so
for the Olympia, it would have been better that you went, because it would have been, you were, like we said, the next guy, the guy is on the cover and stuff. So they would have wanted you at the Olympia, but it is what it is.
It's one of those things where you don't know what one path will take you, another path takes you. Yeah. Had you gone to the Olympia, who knows where your life would be, so this is a path, and you've ended up having a really good
so life.
Awesome.
I think what you're saying, Kevin, is that it was to their benefit if I would have gone to the Olympia that year from a promotional perspective, but long term, they were willing to hibernate me, if you will, right? So that I could stay healthy. And then, because I would bolster the sport more long term if I would have, And so again, that's the wisdom of an older, more wise, less anxious person there. And
we couldn't have asked for more wisdom than those two anyway. So, right.
Yeah. They were great, man. They're good people.
Like when people are posing in Steve's at Steve's gym, he's watching them pose 2 days before or 3 before a contest, and he's just shooting them, what they don't want to hear.
Oh, he ain't gonna blow smoke. That's not Steve.
He's gonna be standing in front of you, so you better listen to what he's saying.
He'll tell you if you look like shit.
He's gonna tell you.
Yeah, that's right. You can be angry. That's okay. You go be angry, but
he knows that's gonna serve you better, and that's the point.
Yeah, that's right. Go get it, man. And I mean, all good athletes need that. I mean, and that's part of the danger of being really, really good, really fast too, is you become surrounded potentially by a lot of sycophants,
Yeah.
and people that
Yes,
are
man.
telling you all the things that you want to hear rather than the truth.
Yeah.
And it's invaluable having the contrary to that, people that are real and that are there, that are willing to risk disappointment for the benefit of your growth.
Yeah. I mean,
That's what I find. Sorry, Kevin, if you don't
no,
mind, I
no,
just
no,
want to
go
say,
ahead.
that's why I love being a coach, and that's why I love, being a coach to other athletes, because I mean, and that's the point of being a good coach, because there's a lot of coaches that are not really worth it, but
Yeah.
to be a mentor, not only to teach them, okay, this is what you have to eat, this is how you have to train, these are the supplements, whatever, to get them in shape, but to help, especially I know that, and I'm sure you have tons of this, younger athletes who want everything now, or they don't understand what the process is, or they want contracts, or they want to know how to make money in the business. It's so nice to be able to mentor somebody and really guide them properly through the whole experience so that they could do it and in a healthy way, in a safe way, and in a sane way, and also keep expectations. You have to understand things take time. Everything, nothing comes to you overnight. You have to work hard. You teach them the values. You teach them things to steer clear from, things to move towards. Times to be aggressive, times to be humble, things like that. And I think that's one of the great benefits, because a lot of guys, the olden days, there wasn't really coaches. Now, pretty much everybody, even from amateurs all the way up, have coaches. And I think sometimes it's really, really valuable from the sense of just mentoring somebody, aside from just the actual knowledge of how to get your physique better.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point, Eric. In fact, it's one of the subjects that we had spoke about talking about was nowadays, because there are so many coaches, right, that I feel like there's this need for these coaches to develop new systems or new ways in order to differentiate themselves, not for the purpose of actually creating something of value, but for the purpose of differentiating themselves, which has created a lot of, I believe, complicated strategies and just unnecessary noise around just prep in general. And it's not necessarily just show prep. I'm talking about just the off season and on season growth and the process of getting a physique to, to that next level. I listened, obviously I was gone for a ways, for time, not necessarily gone from all the gyms. I was just focus on other things. So I wasn't having the conversations and paying attention to what's happening within the industry. And now that I'm back in it, I'm kind of baffled as to, how complicated things are. I'll give you an example. Like, I was talking with one guy and, we're talking through, he's in prep right now, and I'm like, all right, well, let's go through it, right? What's your macros look like, right? And what's your cardio schedule look like, right? How's that progressed over the last few weeks? What's changing? And he's like, oh yeah, and then I have a steps assignment. And I'm a what? He's like, well, a steps assignment. It's like I have, whatever, 1,800 steps a day. I don't know what the number was. So don't hold me to that, just whatever. I'm like, what do you mean you have a steps assignment? So you don't have 2 sessions. You only have 1 session of cardio, right? He's like, yeah. He goes, but I also have to hit this marker of X number of steps. And I'm like, well, why? What does that serve? He's like, well, I don't know. It's kind of like, and I'm trying to think through. I'm like, is this a non-elevated heart rate output, right? Essentially, so we're looking at caloric burn, right? But without the strain of cardio. What's the point of all these things? And that's really all I could come to, right? And maybe you can help me understand some of these things. But the irony of it is that we didn't have that. No one had a steps assignment back in the day in addition to cardio, right? It was either, we started cardio at a certain period, and you either started on the fasted side or you started on the post-workout side. And this would be very dependent on where you were with regard to how lean you were, right? So if there was a long way to go, we had a lot to chop. And of course, you're going to start early fasted, and then you add post-workouts, et cetera, and you build on that. But that was it. And then now it's like you have the same thing combined with these steps things. And so maybe you can help me understand why they're doing that. I don't know if you implement this or not, and what purpose you're seeing it serve. How relevant is it?
Well, no, it's not something that I implement. Actually, I kind of giggled a little bit when you said it.
Okay.
But I think what you said is accurate. I think that they're trying to say like a certain amount of steps equates to a certain amount of extra calories burned just by taking the steps. And it's probably just another way for a coach to measure or give them something to measure that week by week they're taking more steps, therefore that's progression. Of course, I don't really think that that's necessary. I think that's getting a little silly, but but I see this in a lot of aspects of it. Even another good example, I think, is the PED side, is that
Yeah.
now coaches are implementing a plethora of PEDs that really aren't necessary, that really are overloading the system, that are doing more harm than good, when actually some of the greatest physiques that ever were built on the basics of
Simplicity.
PEDs.
Yeah. I
Simplicity. And
mean,
even, listen, even I know Dave Palumbo very, very well. I used to we literally lived one town apart from each other in New York. And if you listen to him, and I, he's a voice that I enjoy listening to, somebody I respect, he'll even say to you, like, you can get into the shape of your life on just testosterone and one anabolic and maybe clenbuterol. Like it's just a very simple
yeah,
cycle. And he'll
yeah,
even say, like, people have won major shows. I mean, even Kevin Levrone talked about it with us. I think he said, when I turned pro, I was using 500 milligrams of testosterone, and that's all I was using. Like and I know he's a freak, so I mean that's a different story. But I think that I don't know whether coaches. I think it's kind of what you say, that um, you're trying to differentiate yourself in some way, shape, or form, like, and make yourself look like you have some sort of secret that others don't have. When a
Yeah.
lot of now, I do have certain training protocols that I have researched and done and created over my 40 years of training. So I mean, like, that I know are effective, but they're all still based around the fundamentals. It's nothing mystical. But I think that with, the thing with like steps and certain protocols, I think some coaches are just trying to, or making you, like, I don't know, do side laterals while standing on an exercise ball or something, like,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
to create stability. Like, listen, this is a bodybuilder. This is not an athlete who needs to move on a field. Like, this is,
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
remain stable so they could target the muscle. You don't have to do crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's like what you said. I think some coaches are just trying to look different, or say, like, I have this special secret that this person doesn't. I have this drug protocol of, I mean, I've had people come to me, Chris, like, from other coaches who've switched to me, and I'll be like, just like you would say, like, tell me what you used to do, tell me what you drug, and I'd look at their protocols and I'd be like, I mean, this is insane. I'm like, how many needles and pills do you swallow
yeah,
a day
Yeah. Yeah.
to
yeah.
look like you're looking? It's insane. And I'll be like, okay, we're getting rid of all this, and we're going to be down just to this. And they're like, oh my God, but how is that going to work? Like, I needed all the, and I'm like,
I'm
you
gonna
don't
melt.
need it. Yeah. So I'm like, now we're gonna work on your training protocol and your diet. And we're gonna use these basics here, which you'll feel a lot. And they look 10 times better. They feel 10 times better. So it's yes. I mean, we'll go into this further because we know that there's a lot of complication going on in the sport today that we don't need. But if you look back, I mean, at the guys who were the pioneers, who had some of the best physiques ever, it was a lot. It was a little bit more, a lot more simplistic back then. And I think
Well,
that's
and
still the
and
best way to go.
and a lot of us were forced into that. It was at the end of the day, most of that had to do with just product availability. I mean, we only got what people had back
Oh, that's
then.
true.
Yeah.
And so it was like, all right, well, what you got? Well, here's what I have. I'm like, all right, well, I'll take a little bit of that and I'll take a little bit of this. And then, I'm going to train my ass off. I'm going to cardio like hell. I'm going to eat like, very, very disciplined to keep myself on track. And then, I guess let that combined with my genetics fall where it lies. The other day I was having a conversation with someone about like Masteron, right? And he's like, well, is this Masteron Prop or is it Masteron, what is it,
An
Enanthate, right?
Anthony.
And I'm like, what? And like, first of all, I never even did Masteron back in the day. It's not something I use. My protocol was incredibly simple. I mean, to summarize, we used, Sustanon 250. We use cypionate occasionally. I never liked an anthate. I don't know why. It just didn't treat me well. I used Deca a lot. I used Equipoise. I used Anavar. I used D-ball. A D-ball is a favorite, right?
Yeah.
And then 80/50. And then we would use why is it skipping my brain right now? The for cardio and for fat burning, it's considered a steroid. It's really not a steroid.
Primobolan.
You talking about
Clen,
clenbuterol? Yeah,
clenbuterol. Yeah.
yeah.
And that's pretty much, okay. And Winstrol, we would use some Winstrol. Okay. And not really the pills, because the pills never really seemed to do a lot, but we would use, injectable Winstrol. That was it. By the way, I had the same, suppliers, if you will, than the top 5 guys in the Olympia, right? I mean, besides Dorian, because he was in a completely different country, so he did whatever he did. And, and some of the guys like Ronnie maybe had some access that we didn't, although I don't think so, to be truthful. Oh, and then of course, growth hormone. We all used growth hormone. And back then it was all sourced from the basic same place back then, which was the gay community that would sell these boxes into the bodybuilding community. What's interesting now is they have all these other items like Tren. Let's talk about Tren. Okay, and you have what is it? Tren E and Tren
acetate, Tren and anthate.
Tren A, yeah. And I'm like, and I never used Tren in my life, and from what I hear, it can be amazing, although obviously toxic, but nonetheless, the point that I'm getting is like, do you even know that stuff is real? So all these mix of other stuff that these guys are using, but has probably about, I don't know what the real probability is, but maybe a 50% probability that's either 50% of what it says it is, or maybe even lower, or some variant degree of that. And so then the reliability goes to crap. So then that just adds variability to the entire protocol to me, right? Rather than just keeping it really, really simple of the things that are pretty damn solid with regard to being the milligrams that you think they are, and then just work your ass off.
Yeah. I mean, I've worked with people who have just used a simple cycle of medium levels of testosterone and maybe 2 to 3 IU of GH.
Yeah.
And train hard and come into shows shredded to the bone with I mean, like, the basics are best and they'll always be the best. It's and you mentioned probably the most basic of anabolics, in what you said, and those are the ones that have always worked. And back in the day of Arnold and Lou Ferrigno, who built incredible physiques back then, I mean, they probably just used D-ball in the off season. They used testosterone, primobolan, and there was no GH back then. There was no Clen, and I mean, and look at the physiques that they brought on stage. I mean, so it's like it's gotten crazy from the PED side, especially now. You also bring peptides into it, and I don't have anything against peptides. I'm very for peptides. I think they could be great for a lot of different things. But I know people who are injecting 10 different peptides on top of 10 different steroids, and I'm just like, it's madness to me. It's a little bit, it's a little bit too much. It gets crazy.
Probably spend like 45 minutes in the toilet before they.
I don't know how many needles you want to fill, but I mean, whatever. It gets a little insane. You probably don't even have time for cardio. That's your cardio, filling needles. I don't know, but anyway, so but that whole thing with the steps thing, that's pretty funny.
So
yeah, I just found it to be. Now it's interesting. As I was talking through this with that person the other day, it's like, there was definitely, like, I stayed busy and worked every day through my entire career. So there was no question about me being lazy. Like, I didn't, like you hear Jay talk about, like, he would sleep, eat, sleep, eat, sleep. I never did that. I probably could have figured out a way to do that financially, but I would drive myself crazy, right? I just do better in an environment where I'm busy, because that keeps me on schedule too with eating, etc. But I guess for maybe in the world where athletes don't do stuff and they just hang around. And so then you as a coach got to force them to get up and move and walk around. Right. So then look, we're going to give you 1,000 steps today or what. I'm like, okay, well, I guess, if that's the reason. So that's where I ended up, was just like, well, maybe it's just for this group of people that have to be structured to get up and move rather than just sit around.
I think it's just another marker for them to measure. It's very easy to say, take 500 steps week 1, take 750 week 2, take, it's just another easy thing to measure, even though maybe not necessary. Maybe they're doing more harm. Maybe their body actually needs the rest. They've done the cardio, they've done the training, they've done the posing, and maybe now they should be relaxing and not taking that many steps. So you don't know. But anyway, that's just where it's gone.
Yeah.
But anyway, Kevin, I know you wanted to say something.
No, I was gonna tell if you want to start getting into the good stuff of the industry now that you wanted to ask him, maybe, ask Chris.
Well, yeah, I mean,
like other than
we're on the topic, Chris. I mean, like,
yeah,
I know that you said, I to be transparent, I asked Chris offline. I said, hey, Chris, I mean, like, I know that, there's some things you might want to talk about. There's some things you might want to get off your chest. And you mentioned a couple of things to me. And part of it was this stuff that where the industry has gotten, or the sport, or whatever you want to look, has gotten a little bit overcomplicated. I mean, what other things would you want to talk about that you think has, because, I believe that there's so much wisdom for the guys, obviously, listen, I mean, you can get people like Frank Zane on here and go way back, but I mean, there's so much wisdom from the guys from the 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s that a lot of the up and comers, and even some of the older guys who are getting into it now, they don't really get to see, they don't get to hear, because there's so many with the internet now, like there's a gazillion influencers out there. And some of them, yeah, listen, some influencers are good. I'm not going to say they're not, but there's a lot of them that are spreading nonsense. So having somebody like you on here, to help us spread some good stuff, what do you have? what
Well, I tell you, I'll start with like a story. I think it's Rich Piana that very famously early in his in his reign of popularity, he had given this example of like doing, grabbing a dumbbell and doing like 60 curls and then 60 tricep extensions every day, right? With this. And he promised that it would give the common man these results, right? And there's so many people that came back and said, I actually did that and it actually worked, right? It's like, well, yeah. And the reason why it worked is because we're taking someone who's not doing anything, right? And then building structure into their life for the first time and consistency, which then becomes the catalyst of change that they've never experienced before. So my point with that and the relevance is, it's like, man, I go to the gym now and I work at a place. I work at a really, really phenomenal gym called Absolute Recomp here in Texas. And it's a series of gyms. He's got 5 open now, and he continues to expand. And a guy named Nabil that started this concept, and he's got every top line that you can imagine, led by Panada. And it's a very different world now. You come in here, and I grew up where that we definitely had some Cybex and some hammer strength machines, which were really nice. And what those machines did for me back then was created a structured environment where I could isolate a muscle group so that my chest, as an example, my chest was one of my weaker parts coming up. It finally started to mature as I get older, but it was very difficult for me to get my chest to engage because my shoulders, my triceps were just so dominant. So you could get yourself into these machines and get that isolation in there. However, even though those were good in helping me kind of wake it up neurologically, I still went and did the weight, right, with the dumbbells or with the barbells or these exercises, what I call the kind of compound movements. Same with the back, right, doing bent over rows, doing things like shrugs, like just good old fashioned barbell shrugs, squats, deadlifts, all these things that are now you can do. You can say, well, why would I put my body under the strain of picking up 400 pounds in a deadlift when I can go to this machine and focus specifically here on X, right? That the deadlift is supposed to focus on. And why would I squat with 500 pounds on my back when I come over here to this isolated, arc squat machine or what have you to isolate that muscle in a much more focused way that puts me in a lot less danger. I don't disagree. However, if you come into these machines, man, you'll sit down to do back and it'll have 4 different cam adjustments. Of course, you have your standard bench height adjustment. You have and it's so damn complicated to where I spend like more time trying to figure that out than I do in the workout. And I'm not saying it's not useful, right? And if you educate yourself, it probably is pretty useful. However, I think it's gotten so complicated now that it's like just pick up the damn weight and lift it, right?
Yeah.
Be consistent about it and drive yourself, like actually get a sweat on, right? Work hard, go to failure with some of the sets, et cetera, right? And I mean, I was working out with a guy for a little while where these guys do like 4 warm-up sets on every damn exercise. And I'm like, are we still on warm-up sets? Because I've done like 3 working sets. You haven't even started your working set yet, right? And it's like that's the culture. They come in here, they 3 or 4 reps of like making sure they adjust and then and then move the bench up, click here, and then change the cam there, and then you're like, my goodness, man, and I think we've gotten so deep into the details that, and when I'm walking around the gym, by the way, growing up in Gold's Venice, I'm not seeing physiques there that are dynamically better than what I saw at Gold's Gym.
Exactly.
And so, the juice and the squeeze for me is kind of just getting a little out of control with these subjects, if you will.
I
I
fully
agree.
agree about the machine things. It's especially where you say the machines themselves are getting overly complicated, because I personally love machines. I love the isolation of machines, especially in having trained for so long, where there's some injuries that have caught up to me, or some areas where I don't want to necessarily want to stabilize heavy weight in a bent over row. And so I find them more valuable as time goes on. Although I always believe in the beginning, learn the fundamentals, because if you can learn to isolate your back on a barbell bent row, your isolation on a machine is going to be that even more incredible, but you need to learn that first. That's how you really teach your body. But anyway, my favorite pieces of equipment in Vegas, I'm also, Texas is also great for training. In Vegas, we have so many gyms now. It's become so huge. I mean, since California's kind of like gotten a little funky, so many people have come to Vegas, Texas, Florida. So Texas is just full of, I train in Flex Lewis's gym, the Dragon's Lair, but we have Powerhouse, we have Fit Club, we have New Tech, we have just so many amazing gyms. My favorite ones are the ones that still carry old school equipment, like the old Flex, the old Cybex, even some Nautilus, just those machines where it's basically the only thing is you just move the seat up and down, or maybe, for your chest, maybe you move a little further from your chest, a little back, depending on how much you can stretch. But that's it. And just like they work together, and they're not necessarily separate. There's not different crazy arcs and things. And those machines to me are still the best. So I agree with you that it's gotten a little, and I think it's just like the trainer thing. It's just like an equipment company wants to put something out that looks like it's so new and so high tech that it's going to build more muscle than anything else. When to me, just sitting down on a basic old Flex seated chest press machine that just, it just feels the best.
What's funny about those machines is when you see the old ones and you go to to push or pull, it's just a chain, or the piston, and you think it's light or it's going to help you, you get stuck. Now today the new machines, it's like you don't know where you're going to put your hand, and it's like everything's moving, and literally,
well, that's what Chris was saying. It takes more time to figure out the machine.
I went to my friend's gym. He's like, he just finished it, and now he's doing another floor. It's all Panada. And I went to take, Phil Heath was there, and George Farah. They came when he opened up the gym, and I was looking at the machines, and like I trained practically my whole life, not just recently. I tapered down a bit, but I'm looking at the machines. I was like embarrassed to see how they work. because it's like, and I just keep looking for like, where are the dumbbells and where's, the bench presses and stuff like that. Because
Yeah.
they can just, and people look at you and say, you say you trained, all these years. It's like, I know, but this thing's like, it's like a hybrid machine, like,
The
Yeah.
thing that bothers me, Chris, about today is that you see, young guys with no muscle on their body, and they're working so hard on a machine or a cable crossover to build their chest. They're not sitting down and bench pressing, doing weighted dips. They're not doing incline
Right.
pressing. They go right to the machines. And I think that to me is the biggest problem, because there's so much, and some of it's not their fault. I mean, it looks easy. You go to this machine, it's a fancy machine. You just sit in there and you do. It's easier than loading a barbell, but I think that there's too much misinformation now to realize how important it is to learn to bench press,
no,
incline press, bent over row, T-bar
no,
row, squat,
nobody wants
deadlift,
to feel that pain
overhead
anymore.
presses, and how
But that,
important it
yeah.
is to to build those stabilizer muscles, to build the balancing muscles, and learn to isolate a muscle with those pieces of equipment. So I think that's one of the biggest. Do you agree? I think that's what I go into the gym. It frustrates me when I see a kid. He weighs $150 and he's screaming on a cradle crossover, and I watch him through his workout, and there was no flat dumbbell presses. There was no his
Yeah.
flies had to be done on machine. It wasn't with dumbbell. Like it, and that's where I think that there's a
Uh,
lot of
how many of
problems.
these young guys today, how many of them wake up in the morning and feel where they trained what body part?
Yeah.
I remember I used to wake up in the morning sometimes feeling like a truck
Like
drove
a
over
truck ran
me.
over you.
And
Yeah.
I would be like,
Yeah.
yeah, all right, I trained chest yesterday and I did tries. And you really you feel it, you feel the muscle,
Yeah.
it's working, you tore it apart and it's getting back together again, it's like,
Right. And
it's
then in addition to that, you have all of these, the ancillary components of doing these, what I'll just for the sake of just separating this, calling them the more kind of compound type movements, right? The basics. And, Dorian Yates very famously said, right, like squats is not just for legs.
it's everything.
Squats is for your entire body, right? And if you think about everything that it takes, I mean, uh, just your traps by themselves, when you're throwing on every week 600 pounds and holding that through that process, right? Because you're tense, right? And you're holding that weight, and it's scary. And and of course your core, everything, your biceps and triceps are straining when you're pushing on those heavy sets. So you get core growth everywhere as a result of this. It's more than just leg day, and you can't replace that, is my point a lot of times with these isolated movements. Is there a time for isolation? I mean, like, back in the day, a leg extension would be considered an isolated movement,
Yeah.
right? And I loved leg extension. So I'm not poo-pooing necessarily that there's a time and a place for some isolated movements, right? And for getting that squeeze and trying to create some separation, whatever. But the things that we're missing from, like, if I think of an incline, just good old fashioned barbell bench, right? Um, Look, man, you don't have to try to go on there and put 315 and try to, break a shoulder, but go on there, put weight. And I used to say this all the time: make sure that you can control the weight and the weight doesn't control you. That was always my advice. And also I'd say, if you can't get more than 6 reps, you're probably letting the weight control you, right? And that was a high level. Now, for more experienced and pro level guys, that's not true. But for general people, I would give that advice so that they understood, like, where in the range does this put me if I'm in control of the weight, right? Um, and then the other advice that I would give people too is if you feel good doing it, like if it's a particular movement and you can just get that connection and squeeze that muscle and really feel it, do more of that. Like, because your body's connected and that connectivity grows, that connectivity begets more connectivity. And that was the basis of everything that I did in the gym. Everything I did, what felt good. And also, when I say that too, what gave me pumps. And that's a big controversy in today's world as well, right? Like, are we chasing a pump, or are we chasing, like the Mike Mentzer type of structure where it's time under pressure or time under stress, and you don't want to get the pump? I just completely disagree. The more pumped I was, in fact, when I went through phases where my body parts, let's say that my arms were lacking, well, I would literally do little pumps every day with those arms. I'd pump them, not hurt them, but just fill them up, fill them up. And I'm telling you, they grew into that swell, right? And the way I see it was, the more nutrition I'm putting into those muscles by giving them new blood every day, the better off they're going to be. And it proved to be pretty correct for my physique.
And well, it's also true. There's a physiological reason why the pump actually fosters growth. I mean, just besides the fact that you're getting nutrients and hormones and everything into the muscle, but also just stretching the cells full of fluid and full of blood and full of everything actually causes a growth response. It's your body. It's a signal. It's an anabolic signal. So of course, getting a pump is a very, very important part of training, and that's probably why that worked so well for you. So, I mean, I don't know if there's more stuff that you want to discuss in this regard, but I'm curious now to go, and if you don't mind, unless Kevin, there's something you want to throw in.
Yeah, let's
I'm
transition.
curious now because now you're making this comeback, right? So, like, which is,
Yeah.
How old are you now, Chris?
49. I'll be 50 in September 1st.
Well, I have to say, just from a standpoint, you don't look like you look like you're still 35. But anyway, get rid of that beard, and you'll still look like the old Chris Cook.
It's cool. The beard. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah. But so a little bit, I'm curious to know, because I find this really interesting. Couple of things. You might have discussed a little bit before, but what is making you want to make a comeback? And what is the process that you're like? What's the plan? Like, what are you doing now to make a comeback? And what are you thinking? You thinking about coming back in open shows? You thinking about coming back in a Masters IFBB? What are you thinking now? And also I want to know, as we've discussed with training and everything, is your approach different now than it was when you were younger, because you're older now and because more wear and tear, because you have more mileage on the body? So if you don't mind getting into those things, I'd love to know, because I have become very I can't stand when people think that they're done when they're 40 years old. They're like, oh, I'm 40 now, I can't grow, or I'm 50 now, I can't grow. I'm personally going to be 58. I'm still growing. And I know it's because of I'm doing the thing. I'm making the adjustments that I need in order to actually keep making progress. So I think it's awesome that you're doing this. So take the floor. What do you have to say?
Yeah, this is good stuff. So really the catalyst was, when I retired, the day I retired in August of 2006. And when I say the day, it's because I had been contemplating and praying on that subject for a whole year. And I literally came to a point where I felt like the Lord just told me. And so I didn't, instead of going to the gym to train like normal basis, I turned around and went to this training facility called Big John McCarthy's Ultimate Training Academy in Santa Clarita. And I walked in and I saw John there, and I go, hey, he asked me, he's like, Chris, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I want to fight. And I just retired today. And the reason why I transitioned to MMA was, first of all, I was fascinated with it. And I grew up as a wrestler. I was a wrestler my entire life. So the whole idea behind ground game and MMA was fascinating in that regard. But I knew that I needed something to focus on if I was going to leave all this equity on the table from bodybuilding. My career really was just actually starting to get to where it needed to be for me to take it to the next level. And so for me to leave, I knew that I was very conscious of that I was walking away. And so I was like, if I give myself something new, if I to concentrate on every day and train hard, then I'll mentally be able to manage that. So that's why I got into MMA. So I trained MMA, and did MMA for like 10 years 8 years. And then realized that getting punched in the head on a daily basis training didn't make a lot of sense, especially on the professional side of my career, which is the finance business at the time, was going really well. So I was like, look, it doesn't make sense. So I just continued on jiu-jitsu, and I've done, a lot of tournaments throughout the years. I love to compete. I just enjoy those butterflies in your stomach, to compete type of position, and the fears that come of that and conquering that fear. So that being said, I end up with a lot of surgeries throughout all those years of 20 years of doing jiu-jitsu. So my last shoulder surgery, like, 2 years ago, I started doing bodybuilding to repair it. And I also, by the way, that's what's introduced me to peptides as well, because everyone is talking about them. I didn't know much about them. So I did them as I started my loading phase ahead of surgery, and then I did them, and I healed faster than I'd ever had healed before. So that really proved peptides for me. But nonetheless, as through that process, I began to get that pump again. And you start thumbing around on it, and I'm not, not doing TRT or anything, but just getting that little swollen feeling and looking in the mirror, and that change that you can see, and you're like, man, it'd be nice if I could just walk around looking like that. And that was exactly what got me into bodybuilding in the first place. So I just slowly started doing that. And then I went to work actually for Hani Rambod for a little while. And that's a whole long story as to why I did it. But from the business side, I went there to help him, fix some things in his business. And that was what I had been doing for years. And that kind of got me deeper into the old world again. So I started training at his facility. And then I went ahead and decided to get on TRT. And then, of course, that's a whole new level of pump. And I just started falling in love with it. And I thought, well, you don't have to worry about more surgeries doing bodybuilding. That's the beauty of it, is that I never had one surgery or one real physical ailment from doing bodybuilding. All of it came from jiu-jitsu. And so I'm like, well, maybe I'll just give this a shot. And it just kind of evolved, right? And so right before the turn of the year this year is when I decided I'm going to give this thing a shot. So I went from 200 milligrams of testosterone to 400 milligrams of testosterone, and started feeling pretty darn good. And that's when I'm like, well, look, my kids are of age. They're, things are good. Like, my businesses are going good. I have multiple businesses of various sorts that I can manage at the same time, and kind of talk with my wife. I'm like, what do you think? And she's like, why not? I mean, obviously we want to try to be safe. I'm not trying to, I don't have a death sentence. Or I was talking to Bob Ciccarello about this the other day, and it's like, Bob, I'm not, I'm not trying to end my life or anything. It's not that at all. But man, it'd be really nice to itch that scratch again one more time to see what is left, and so that's where it came from. It really is pretty innocent in its creation, but the competitive element is something it's hard for me to not do it without having that kind of objective,
Sure. Yeah. So what are you thinking competitive? Like I said, what are you thinking? Are you thinking about going, what do you think in terms of shows? Like, what is your thought process? What is your goal?
Yeah, my initial thought is the Masters Olympia, and see if I can get the invite there and utilize that, potentially, obviously, if all things go right with regard to invite, et cetera, to leveraging that as a debut, and then go from there, right? I mean, and I don't have a real definitive pathway with all of it just yet, because frankly, I'm trying to understand where my body's at and how it's going to respond, not just physiologically as far as like how I'm going to respond to the weights, but even chemically, right? So, does a 49 or a 50-year-old man respond on 700 milligrams of testosterone like I used to? That's a great question, and then growth hormone and things like that. And so I'm kind of ramping up, if you will, in that process, and making sure that things are looking good and feeling good while doing it. Like, it's interesting. I've not been able to do legs for the last 2 weeks because I don't even know what I did. It's not like I don't even remember hurting it, but something happened to my left knee where something is not right. So I'm letting it rest a little bit. And those are the kinds of things that I think are a little bit different at this age. I mean, and it's like, okay, back off a little bit, see how it goes, let it heal, and then get back into it. And that's the process.
So that's go ahead, Kevin. You want to say
So
something?
and even now you're showing, I mean, you're showing people I think your goal is, I mean, it's out there. It's the Masters Olympia, right? So that's
Yeah.
2027. So you
Yeah.
started your prep like what, 2025
I started, I mean, literally, I was 219 pounds, call it the first of the year this year.
this year. All right. So
Yeah.
almost a
Now
year
I'm,
almost a year and a half before.
And you're up to what, Chris?
yeah. Yeah.
What do you?
Well, I got up to 250 for a minute, and then I was really watery and not and so I was trying to figure out some water retention issues. Like my kidney creatinine and all my blood panel looked all good, but I think the growth that I was on was just not reacting very well. So I backed it completely off, and I'm back down to like 240 and 242, give or take, in the morning. And but like still like have feathering in my quads and pretty relatively dry. Of course, missing some fullness as a result of that. But so in that 6 month period, give or take, I put on that 40, 50 pounds, which honestly, I think that was very much expected, right? That initial big boom, just my body, my nervous system. Yeah, I've been here before, right? So my body knows it's not unfamiliar. But now realistically looking at my body, there's a fullness and a density that is still missing, of course, that I need to put on another 20 pounds or so, I think, before I start to look round like I need to.
You have enough
What were you
time.
saying, Kevin?
I mean, no, like you have enough time to see where you are before that.
Yeah.
So maybe you might want to do another Masters show,
Yeah.
doesn't have to be you know, a top tier one. You can just to see where you're
Yeah.
at. Um,
Yeah. It's maybe not a bad idea. I mean, a lot of these, well, kind of, my body always responded well to prep and rebound. And,
exactly.
I very famously, I was one time when I was doing the Ironman in '06, Kevin Levrone was helping me for that show.
Wow.
And I grew into the show, and that Kevin did too. Kevin very famously would come off of everything and then put on lots of weight coming. And that's how, because I always came off for a few months before of everything and then would ramp up. So when I did the USA, for example, I started that diet at like 235 and I ended up on stage at like 246. So I would always grow into shows, and which was a little bit different than a lot of people. I know they get really heavy and they pull down, but I could never eat that way. That was one of the things that's one of the things I'm trying to work out right now too, is, you know, these, the amount of food that people do now in the off season, we just didn't do it that way. Now I would eat big meals, but it'd be like 3 big meals, right? And then I had some protein shakes between. I would drink a fair amount of my calories. I did a lot of carb force because I would do insulin before as a pre-workout and then after, right, as a post-workout, and not huge amounts. I'm talking about literally 7 to 10 units, not just enough to get crazy pumped. But I would drink my carbs. I wouldn't eat my carbs because for me, that was always the safest way to manage that what if you will, on insulin. But my point is that, now the protocols, just talking with folks, it's like, getting in 100 grams of carbohydrates, 6 meals, right? So 600 grams, and then drinking a few extra, so pre-workouts and then intra-workout stuff. So, 700 grams of carbs on a daily basis. Bro, I do that for a little while. And then I tell you, I'm just like done. I 2 weeks into that, and I just can't eat anymore. And so for me, it just doesn't seem to work. But that's not what I did before. So I kind of had to went through that little bit of cycle earlier in the year, like just a couple months ago. And now I've kind of backed off a little bit and kind of going back to my old school, like eating big, heavy meals 3 times a day, drinking a lot of those calories on the back end or in between. I mean, and so that I don't walk around feeling like just a bloated monster, and I feel like my body responds better. I stay less watery in the process.
Yeah. So, and what about training wise? So, I mean, like you said, you didn't even injure your knee, but something's bugging you in your knee. These are
Yeah.
things that happen in time as we get older. And it's simple. It's like a car engine. Just the more miles on it, the more things that tend to go wrong, no matter how careful we are. So is your training, obviously you're not going to walk into the gym and throw 5 plates on the bar and squat it 20 times, I don't think now. How is your training different? Have you moved a little bit more towards machines or cables, or are you still using basics? Is your rep ranges different? Is your training split different? Like, how is it different now that you're progressing through?
So, you know, it's funny, man. Like sometimes you have to remind yourself of different things. Just because I'm older doesn't mean I don't make some of the same mistakes and kind of have to go back and go like, oh yeah, there was a reason why I did that. And so the first 4 or 5 months, I was training 6 days a week, taking only Sundays off. And then I just realized after that, I just hit a point where I was like, dude, I'm just tired, right? My body's beat up. And I think it was just part of the newness and the anxiousness of getting back in there, trying to train hard. And, for me, work ethic has always been a focal point, right? So then I backed off now and I've taken 2 days. I'm doing, I take Thursdays and Sundays off. And so it's a little bit of a better split on rest. And I'm feeling a lot better on the weight side. So I came in and I started training with this younger guy, not because of any other reason, because he was just, a relatively strong, similar in strength type of size, but he's like 32 or no, he's 31. And, I kind of just approach it like, I'll try what you're doing. Like, I'm not going to poo-poo everything just for the sake of it. Let's see. Right. And then what ended up happening was it was focused on a lot of these isolated movements. And then I just kind of hit a point where I go, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to do, and I started moving back toward more of the compound type of structure with utilizing machines on the ancillary. Right. So, so call it
A balance. I mean, you like a balance.
yeah. I mean, there's just nothing to substitute a good hard, like row, like barbell row or T-bar row with heavy ass weight, right? And then from there going into a machine where I can isolate a little bit more and kind of finish off that pump, right? And I'm not talking about 3 rep range. I'm talking about my rep range is like, it's wide, but it's like, if I accidentally put on a little too much weight, the rep range will be like 8, right? But that's not the intention. My intention is like that 9 to 15 rep range, give or take. If I end up on the low side, then I'll do drop sets a lot. I love drop sets because that's volume is how I just connect with the muscle and feel good. So my point is it's rolling back into more of those compound type of structures. Now, on a relative basis, a lot less weight. Back in the day, I would do these compound movements. I'd start out with, I would go up to 6-plate front squats, racket, walk over and do 6-plate rear squat, right? A superset with it, right? I can't manage that now. I mean, it's not even though not only the weight is smaller, but even just the volume of the workout itself, I can't manage that, right? So, but I don't think anything replaces the squat for me. I like my body responds really well. The entire body does, right? Whereas, going to these let's say you go to a hack squat and, it used to be, I would position my feet to manage, whatever, 8 plates on each side, right? And go fucking heavy. And I was always an ass to ankles guy with all my squat movements. Whereas like now it's like, well, strip half that weight off, bring your toe down on that platform, let the knee extend beyond the toe, get that more isolated quad, right? I was liking it for a few weeks, but then now my knees hurt, right? So I'm like, man, I don't know. Whereas if I just get under the damn squat bar, I don't have that issue. So I'm still exploring a little bit of that balance, if you will. And then while with a body that's put on 40 pounds over the last year, in 6 months. Yeah. So it's like this, there's a lot of moving parts, right? You have a body that's growing and changing, evolving, but is older than it used to be. I want to be open to new movements, but I'm kind of reverting back to my old ways with at least the movement style. The weight's a little different, of course, but so it's difficult for me to replace the old stuff that worked. It's like laterals for delts, right? I never had a delt problem. My delts were and triceps and arms were always very good. And you have all these different variations of lateral machines now. And at first I was like, man, this is fascinating. I really love how you can isolate. And then now I'm like, I actually enjoy the variability of the movement that I can put with a dumbbell. So for example, when I'm doing my laterals, bending over a slight bit more and adding my rears in that movement, because they're kind of one and the same. They both need to grow equally, instead of just isolating the rears and then isolating the medials. It's just a preference thing, right? But for the guys who had the best delts in the world, in my mind, in my opinion, right, which would be Kevin Levrone, Flex Wheeler, they never did. It was all dumbbells, man. That's what we used, and we would do these massive drop sets. I mean, I famously would walk in. I'd start with an 80-pound lateral, probably only do 4 or 5 reps, but I'd do 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, and I would just walk out of there purple and full, so maybe instead of starting with a 70 or an 80, maybe I start now with a 50 or 55, and still stay within that, the framework, right? I'm not swinging the weight going crazy. I definitely was never a Ronnie Coleman guy with regard to that. I was a little more isolated and structured than he was. But I still like, the leveraging inertia and at times, right? And cheating a little bit. I think there's a place for that.
Well, I talk to Jay Cutler all the time. And he's just like, I just found a way that I like to lift. And he goes, most people think my form sucks, but it worked for me. So, I mean, like, sometimes you need to find what works for you. So it sounds to me like it's almost like you're on a new journey again, relearning your body, relearning what works for Chris Cook. And as you're going through it, you're kind of finding like your old methodology still works best for you as long as you make the proper adjustments with weights and maybe slightly form, but that still seems to be like you're returning to your roots.
Yeah, I think it's funny because when you watch Branch Warren train, even now, right? A lot of his old tendencies still remain, right? And maybe the weights come down a little bit, but that intensity there, that swing of the weight still there, and it works. Like he made it to be top 2 in the world, right? At his peak, and someone like Jay Cutler, you're not going to argue with it. It was what it is, and he's still one of the kind of iconic names of it'll be 20 years that we'll be still talking about Jay. So
yeah, nobody's going to ever say ever teach technique of doing bent rows like Ronnie Coleman, but yet that same person who orders ain't going to be 8-time Mr. Olympia with the craziest body that ever lived. So you can't argue with success. There's nothing you can say about it. It is what it is.
Yeah,
and
for
sometimes
sure.
it's a matter of finding out. Listen, we all have 2 lungs and a heart and 2 eyes and everything else, but some things just work differently for us depending on our structures, depending on our fiber makeup.
Yeah, that part of that, like for example, Eric, I mean, it's like your bicep, let's say, right? And do you think that doing a preacher bar curl versus a cambered bar curl, preacher bar machine, versus a cambered bar standing curl versus doing an ISO individual, dumbbell curl, like, do you think that any of those are going to have any influence on the change of the shape of your bicep?
Oh, you're asking me that question? No, I believe that basically our muscles were born with a genetic map and we have an origin insertion and we're not going to change it. The only thing that I will say regarding that is that I do believe that different angles of push or pull and different, ranges of motion and that stuff will hit different sets of motor unit pools and different sets of muscle fibers. So in other words, I don't think that you can build your optimal chest by doing bench presses and nothing else, even if they feel great to you. Like I do believe you need to change angles. You need to do flies. You need to do dips. You need to do inclines. So I do believe that within that muscle for the muscle to reach its genetic potential, you need to work different sets of fibers and different angles, but
Yeah.
you're not going to all of a sudden, have an Albert Beckles peak on your biceps just because you're doing
Right.
concentration curls. That can't happen. It's not
Yeah.
going to happen.
And the reason, the basis for the question was simply like, just go in there, choose your exercise that feels good and hit it, bro. Your biceps going to grow. Now on your back, like because of how the lat, and the rhomboids and all the various elements of our back, rear delt and trap,
It's more complex, way more.
it's more complex, right? But even with that, Ronnie Coleman, if the guy only did freaking pull-ups, probably would have had the same back that he did. It kind of didn't matter, right? And I mean, who's to say? It's not a definitive all-in statement because there's a possibility it could be different. But the point is that I think that on the macro perspective, it's probably not. He was connected there, which gave him the ability to build that thing.
Well, I think what you're saying, and I agree with you, and what you're going to say is that we all need to experiment with exercises as we go through. And there are certain ones that we're going to connect with. There's certain ones that we're not going to connect with. No matter what you do, you just don't feel it, doesn't feel right, doesn't hit the muscle the way you want to hit it. Discard those movements. Just because everybody says you have to do this movement to get a big A, B, or C, does not mean that it's true. I mean, so for some people, the back squat worked amazing. Dorian Yates said he didn't like back squats. He liked doing hack squats and leg presses, and look what his legs look like. Some people were great bench presses. Some people didn't really use a bench press.
Dorian had a story. When early in his career, he had a little tweak, a day where something happened while doing a regular, back squat. And he switched to leg press that day and never went back as a result, because he assessed that the risk was too high relative to the reward that he could get through a controlled environment. And again, it's funny because I always kind of found that very statement was controversial to his entire platform, right? Because he had the experience of that, he found the risk reward ratio benefited going to that. Whereas if you talk to him in the same tone about bent rows, right, which very famously the guy doing 405 bent rows, and arguably at the time the best back in history, it's like, who was it? Phil Heath, same scenario, bent rows. I don't know, it was 405, but maybe let's say it's 315. He had this little tweak. So from then on, he never did it again and developed probably, I don't know, maybe the third or fourth best back ever in history.
Yeah. Well, I just think that we all develop pools of movements that just feel good to us, and those are the ones we need to stick to.
Yeah.
I mean, you go into the gym and you're just like, that feels great, I want to do it. That feels great, I want to do it. This movement always sucked for me, I don't want to do it. And I think that with experience, you get that. And that's kind of like, go in there, train hard on the movements you feel, and you're going to grow.
Yeah, agreed. Very much.
So, not to keep you here forever, Chris.
It's almost, we've been on for an hour and a half.
Yeah, let's talk about a bit of, the juicy stuff. The Mr. Olympia 2026. Who's competing? Samson, Nick, Derek, Hardy, the guys, Crizio, the guys that are qualified. Nick will probably get qualified as well. How do you see the outcome? Maybe like, I'm not saying that you pick the winner or whatever, but like, you have Samson at 340 pounds, what's he going to do? There's a lot of new talent as well. Where do you see it going? Like, I mean, do you see it?
Yeah. Well, we all have our various biases, and obviously that gets shaped by looking in the mirror a lot of times, right? Yeah. So, I'm a bigger guy, and I liken myself to be in that range of size and height where, to be what I would qualify as optimal to be that perfect physique, right? And we've all seen like the higher end of that, like the Gunther Schlierkampf, right?
Yeah.
Incredible muscularity and beautiful body in its own right, but yet for some reason you add a few inches and there it kind of morphs some of the natural flow and symmetry of what we would deem kind of the perfect body. And then of course, when you get a little shorter than that, it does the same distortion. And this is not a criticism. It's just physiology. So then that's really what we're dealing with right now, right? Because we went through this period where the big guys were the big guys, dominant. You know, Sean Ray was never going to be Miss Olympia. Lee Priest would never be Mr. Olympia. You know, Dexter Jackson, perceptively, when I was in, was never going to be Mr. Olympia. And then, man, he ended up eking it out. Now, he eked it out during a phase or a period where the quality and number of the bigger guys was low, right?
Yeah.
And then Jay just wasn't the best Jay that he could be. So then they gave him his due. And you know what? I was all for it. It's like, dude, freaking congratulations. I mean, this guy, the blade was as consistent as any other guy's ever, he's like a Sean Ray. Like, you can always count on him being highest quality. However, you take a guy like that, at his very best relative to a Jay or a Ronnie or a Flex or a Chris at their very best, it's difficult for me to make the case. I just don't see how you can get there, right? And so now we're dealing with that same thing. I actually have a bias toward Derek because of his personality. I got to spend time with him. I like him as a person. I think he's a good dude. I feel bad for him and how much crap he's had to absorb as a Mr. Olympia.
Yeah, it's always like that. Yeah.
And the sport is brutal that way. It just is. People are jerks and unthoughtful. But if you're going to be the best in the world, you got to have some thick skin.
I mean,
right?
It was like Phil Heath. He was the most hated guy. Like he was the first like Mr. Olympia with social media, basically.
Right.
And the minute he retires, everybody loves him.
Right.
Or the minute he loses, everybody loves it. It's just a vicious circle.
Well, he played that role though too, right? He didn't play the hero role. He played another role, and it's, I mean, dude, clearly it worked for him. The guy, he got enough titles. We don't need to feel bad for Phil Heath for sure, but
I'm just like,
but now we sit in this era, right? And so we're looking at the Samsons of the world. We're looking at Andrew Jack,
Tonio Burton,
right? Right. And then we got Haughty. Of course, you can't have the discussion without, where's Haughty going to fit, right? He's certainly a top 3-4 guy over the last, 3 or 4 years. And those are for me. And we have, darn it. Why am I spacing his name?
There's the Russian Sergey, Derek.
No, the freak that
Nick Walker, Fitzwater.
Nick Walker. Sorry, Nick. And
he's still not qualified.
No, once you get into your late 40s and 50s, that's what happens to your brain. I can
you should. Sometimes I just stay looking at Eric during the show.
You're just like, I can't remember the name of a guy that we spoke about the week before. And we're looking it up on our computer going, oh, yeah.
And so we have like Nick Walkers of the world. And just a small bit about that. Like Nick Walkers of the world, number one, I love the Nick Walkers of the world, because the freak shows of this sport are what keep a lot of people coming back, man, and including myself even. I was never a freak show like that, but I can really appreciate the Marcus Rules of the world because, man, they just come out. They're so gross that it's amazing.
Just gnarly, just gnarly.
And when you see these guys in their videos, or if you see them live, and the amount of muscle that they're able to accumulate on one joint, you're like, how is that even humanly possible? And so you just gotta love him, and I love him for that. I love that he is who he is, and I love that he's maturing in that actually, right? Will he ever be a Mr. Olympia? Look, you can never say never, of course, right? But among those, like if everybody brings their best, the reality of it is that the Samson Dudas and the Andrew Jacks of the world, Andrew's a very interesting case because he's so tall that for me, he actually does get a little distorted. There's these little elements of distortion.
Gaps. I think he gets to fill in.
He's got
And
gaps and holes. He does.
Yeah.
it's odd because he's not really missing parts, but yet whereas if Samson is able to come in and this
Nail
is the
it.
great balance that Samson's going to have to find, right? Where
Yeah.
if he's big and full but gets tight enough, in other words, he actually comes in perfect,
He'll win.
brother. I don't
Difficult to beat.
know that
No, he'll
he
win.
could be.
He'll win. Yeah.
I don't know that he could be beat. Exactly. He's the perfect height, the perfect muscularity. He's perfectly symmetrical. It's a package that's just undeniably like from those who we have to choose from. He's the guy if he can bring it. Andrew's gonna get play because of the momentum that's behind him. If he brings a good package, he's gonna get love. He's gonna be a top 3, like no question about it. And then Derek kind of plays in that same realm. It's interesting. The thing that I think people miss is Derek is a very young guy.
Yeah.
Like Ronnie Coleman didn't become his first Olympia until he's the age Derek is now,
Yeah.
right? Or thereabout, I believe, right? And so there's still this maturity and graininess that everybody complains about with Derek that's going to come if he stays in the game and he ekes it out. He's going to continue to be a player as because he will get better, like not necessarily bigger. He doesn't need to get bigger, but he'll get better as a result of that quality and time. And then, Nick Walker just is Nick Walker. I think we've seen the best of Nick Walker. I think last at the Arnold was like I wasn't there live. So of course you always miss some stuff and true, you only see what you get to see on the feed. But relative to all the pieces of Nick that I get critical about, right, which is his stomach, right? I think that he presented himself incredibly well. I think he was in perfect shape. As we went on in the night show, it started to evolve a little bit on his abdominal side, but all in, all perfect. I think he's a top, maybe 4th kind of guy, 5th, he's a top 5 contender guy just because what he lacks in symmetry and that beauty element, he overwhelmingly makes up in muscularity and just grotesque muscle. So
what I found shocking, not shocking. I mean, he did so well at the Arnold Classic with Guy Cisternino helping him, not really his coach. Now he went on to a new coach, a guy not so popular. I've never heard of him. Eric, do you know the guy? I mean,
no, I don't. You're right. No, many have not heard of him.
Yeah, I know. I mean, Eric could have coached him, but he didn't call him. So now it's like it's a gamble for him. Now we're gonna see he's doing. Is it Tampa? Is he doing Tampa?
I think.
Yeah. So there's that question mark. He's not qualified yet. Then you have Hadi Chupan. He's being coached by Milos. So that's interesting as well. And it's like, I know none of them have to prove anything in their careers, but I'm saying this is a huge gamble on Milos' side, because if Hadi doesn't place in the top 3,
that's what I say. If Hadi drops out of the top group, it's gonna be like, oh, look what happened. Milos took over and he's not second anymore.
And Milos has 99%. What's his name will qualify soon.
Belarus.
And if Belarus comes in on point, he's dangerous as well. So I heard Milos talk this week. He's not really worried about it, but I'm telling you, man,
Milos doesn't worry.
Well, I think that where Milos is, I think that Hadi is a great opportunity for Milos because it gives Milos a very clear shot to be, Chris Aceto is kind of been the man lately, right? He's been doing, and so from a coaching perspective, I don't think there's actually much risk in bringing on Hadi. I think it's actually a kind of a cool story with how everything has ended up and then how he separated from Hani and, all that mess. I actually got to, while I was working at Evogen for a little while with Hani, I got to hang out with Hadi there as well. And, he doesn't speak English, but he tries his best to communicate. And I saw his work ethic. And this, he came and he would live here for a while. and he would train in this gym every day. And the guy truly is a Mr. Olympia mentality guy. He loves it. He eats up every moment of that. Here's the problem though. He's a terrible Mr. Olympia from a marketing perspective.
Of
And
course.
this is not about his physique at all. And unfortunately, but there are
He
realities
should have
about
learned English. He should have learned English.
Yeah.
Sorry.
it. Well, 100%. And then because of where he lives, he doesn't travel to go, so he can't market the sport. And then, his deaf issue is an issue as well. And again, this is not his fault. But as a result of that, though, the reality of it is he'll never be Mr. Olympia again. I know that I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just trying to be true,
It's
honest.
It's sport. Like
It is
Kevin
what it is.
explained it to us when we spoke to him on the show. Kevin actually went up to Joe Weider and said, "Why I've won every show that there is. Why can't I win the Mr. Olympia?"
That's
But
exactly right.
he said, if you win it, if Sean Ray wins it or Chris Cormier, it's like, okay, they won it. But if Dorian Yates comes to the show, everybody wants to come to see what's going to happen with Dorian Yates. So it is a
It's
bit
a
of
business
marketing
aspect to this.
Yeah, it is a business,
Yeah, I mean, you're in the masses. What Kevin was saying is the degree of separation between Kevin, Sean, and Flex and Chris is basis points. In other words, percentage of 1%. From a global scale perspective, whereas Dorian was the clear separator, and so from how many more dollars would he earn with those guys being in first versus Dorian? The reality of it is a lot.
Exactly.
And Hadi, unfortunately, I think they learned that lesson quickly, and that's why they removed him quickly. And I remember, it's funny, Hani was absolutely rip shit. Now, he was training both of them for that next contest where Derek ended up winning. And he was pissed that Derek won.
Wow.
Not outwardly, he didn't expect, but he felt that Hadi had won that show. And he may not be wrong in that regard, but the truth of the matter is that
it's marketing.
That there's too much of a risk for him to be there. Now, could he be a top 3 or 4? Yeah, and I think he would. He has that potential, and of course, it wouldn't hurt the sport per se if he was in those positions.
Yeah, like even Kai Green said it. He said it not long ago in an interview. He said back then, even with Phil Heath, you can't beat the Mr. Olympia. Either he comes in really bad, and maybe you beat him. And it was like, Lee Haney, Jay Cutler beating Ronnie Coleman. All right, Ronnie was on his,
he wasn't at his best.
He wasn't at his best, and Jay placed second, 6 times. So it was like meant to be.
When the shot heard around the world.
When Dexter won it, that was shocking.
Yeah. Well, the shot that was heard around the world back then was when Gunther Schlierkampf beat Ronnie Coleman at the Arnold.
Yeah. Not the Arnold.
A show of strength.
Show of strength. Yeah.
And that was, it was like, because basically no reigning Mr. Olympia had been beaten in any other show previously. So it was a major shock. Yeah. But what it did was it sent a message to Ronnie to change a few things as well, of which he did make those changes, of course, and his reign continued on the Olympia stage. But it's interesting to see how these messages get sent, if you will, right, from the corpus of bodybuilding, right, the entity itself and the business relative to the athletes that need to produce an outcome for the benefit of truly what they see as everybody,
But like the Olympia now, what's exciting about it is every Olympia, you don't know who's going to win. We can't say Derek's going to defend his title again.
Right.
We can't say Hadi's going to win, or, maybe,
You don't know. It could be anybody in the top 5, 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the freaks as well. I don't know if you ever saw that guy, Sergey, the Danilov, the Russian guy. Did you see that guy?
Yeah.
That guy's a freak. I mean, I've met him. He's like 2 wardrobes walking in front of you. He's another monster. You ugly muscle everywhere. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, it depends what what's going to push the brand, you know, and it's like I don't know how they don't utilize Derek even more because Derek is he's a marketable guy. I don't know why they're not using him that much as before, you know. So um uh it's just interesting. I just wanted to find out, you know, your take on it.
One quick, Christopher, what do you think about we always talk about him. What do you think about Brandon Curry? I am so impressed with the
Yeah.
way Brandon has come back the last couple of years that at his, not that he's old, but instead of declining, this guy is getting better than ever. I mean, what do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's baffled everybody, in particular his legs, right? And
Yeah.
His
how his
legs.
legs have grown. And it was, I tell you, it was the interview I think that Dave did with him after the Arnold. Was it the Arnold?
Could
This
be.
year?
Isn't that where we saw him last? Wasn't it the
Yeah.
Arnold?
The Arnold.
He also did something after the Arnold, but
So, but there was this famous, the pretty, viral video that Dave was said. So, dude, what did you do to, and he went into this very well articulated understanding of the separation between breaking down the muscle, stressing the nervous system, and also stressing our structure system, our bones, right, and our joints, and balancing those on the different days so that you could get optimal growth in it. And I think that that's the thing that I think that he's tapped into that is very unique is understanding how to manage a body that is not young anymore
Yeah.
and then produce a growth. It's not, and I think this is something for me to pay attention to as well, because I'm kind of like in that I'm trying to do the same thing, which is, like finding that balance between the compound movements that are necessary in order to stimulate that growth, but then resting it in a way so your nervous system and your structural system, right, your bones and your joints don't break down to inhibit you. Like right now, I have a sore knee. Like, okay, you messed something up, right? Where did you go a little too hard, or an extra set or an extra rep too much, whatever the case, or an exercise that maybe you just don't need to do anymore
Yeah.
relative to the risk, um, to offset that. And that's where we're at, right? Those are the great questions. Brendan's a smart man.
Of
He's
course.
also very balanced, caught mentally. The guy, we had him on our podcast the other day, and he just is a very well articulated, smart individual who's calm, man. He is
Yeah.
cool as a
he's
Joe,
chill.
right?
Yeah, he's so
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
He's
that
a good
guy.
dude.
I'm so happy to
He's a
see that he's still in the
Neat
game and
guy.
still beating people and still a
Yeah.
threat any stage he gets on.
Yeah. And then he can place third on the show. I think he did that. If you already end up placing third, I think. And
Yeah.
then he's not upset about it. He doesn't, you don't see him go on there and create any controversy or anything. He just kind of like, yep, and he moves on, right? And
Yeah.
it's
Listen,
like, dude, right on, man.
he's
You
an
you
Arnold.
you
He's an Arnold
yeah.
Classic winner. He's the Olympia winner. So, you know, he has nothing to prove, you know. He's
Yeah.
just loving it.
He's still
I
obviously still
think
enjoying himself.
if you
I
had to
mean,
do the Masters, you'd be the most relaxed guy on stage because you have nothing to prove. You know,
Yeah,
like you said, you're
totally.
not going to kill
I tell you,
yourself.
that'll be the opportunity is to enjoy it for the
Yeah.
first time. I never enjoyed it. I was so there's some videos I have on my social of me on stage at the New York Pro, and you can just tell by my face, like I am way too serious, right? Rather than just enjoying it. And this is the stuff like, the Kung Kamalis of the world and the Melvin Anthonys, when they could go on stage and just have a good time,
yeah,
you know what I
yeah,
mean? And
yeah.
just dance, right?
Yep.
That's what I admire about that. It's like, imagine being so loose. We've all done it, you guys, but I've caught myself dancing in front of the mirror before, right? Trying to, and you that's nationals there,
That's
but
nationals. Yeah. Wow.
yeah, that's nationals. But the point that I'm getting at is that looseness and being able to just enjoy the moment, man, and have fun. All the work is done. It really doesn't matter. So you might as well go up there and just soak it in, man, and smile, and hit your poses and be relaxed. That's
If
that's
you could put in all the hard work, Chris, and then go up on stage and have fun,
Yeah.
like, look at all, this is what I've done. This is what I have to present. And now I'm going to enjoy myself presenting it. I mean, that's like, you can't
Yeah.
beat that,
Big time.
so I hope that is going to be for you in 2027.
Yeah.
And I hope that, since you have this journey going on, and I'm sure Kevin feels the same, I would love to have you on again, like as you're going through this journey and see how it's progressing and see where it's
Yeah.
going and,
Yeah.
and see where you're at in the progression. Because I mean, first of all, you're great to have on the show anyway. I love talking to you.
We
You
could
have
have
so
went
much
on for like
Man,
wisdom to
thanks,
five
impart.
guys.
hours. There's so much to talk about, but
Yeah, we could
Yeah.
talk to you
yeah.
for so long, but I'm so happy that you're coming back into the sport. I think that's amazing, and I just definitely want to keep up with you on the journey.
Well, look, I'm honored to be here, guys. I really am. And I'm, it is actually really surprising to me, Eric and Kevin, that anybody really cares. It's been so long, and
Oh,
so what an honor it is to even be able to have these conversations and
boy.
think that my opinion is relevant,
Yeah.
and my
No, no,
experiences at
no.
this point.
Like,
But
yeah.
you know, I'm grateful. So I'll come on
I
anytime.
love
I enjoy them.
I love the guys of the past, the guys that still have, like Stallone says, stuff in the basement, you know?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I got stuff
there's
in the
plenty of
basement.
that. There's definitely
Yeah,
plenty of that for sure.
no, listen, today the younger guys, nothing against them, but it's like, I don't know, the guys that have been through it all and retired, or maybe like coming back like you, or there's just so much to learn from them, and they are literally giving out examples and education for things that people are what's missing today. And it's like, it's all information, man. It's like, if I just like, if somebody goes back to the basics, I'm sure they'll improve. You know what I mean? It's like what we've been talking about through the whole show, and that's what I like promoting.
Yeah,
The not saying the old stuff. It's the stuff that works. It's
yeah,
what, old is gold. I always love saying that.
yeah.
And so
Well, listen, if we might not have 100,000 people who are going to view the video, but if five people view the video and learn from you and learn and go,
Yeah,
wow, what Chris said
that's
really
right.
yeah,
really hit home, and they take it into their own training, their own life, whatever, and they benefit from it. I mean, that's what we want to see. So like,
yeah,
that's our goal here. It's really
Yeah,
not, again, we know we can go after clickbait, and we know we can get
oh, yeah,
controversial. We know that we can, we have inside information we could throw out there and do, but that's just not what we're about. We're just about positivity, and we'd rather have
yeah,
more quality people checking in and seeing the people that we have on there and learning from them than just trying to go after views. And you're definitely,
yeah.
I mean, that's why when I saw you contacted me and said, "Hey, you're doing great things," and I was like, "Wow, Chris." Because I've known, I mean, I'm older than you, so I've been through the sport. I watched you come up. And so
Yeah.
like, I'm like, wow, Chris, and then immediately I'm like, I'm going to see if he wants to come on the show. Like, it was not even a thought. And then I messaged Kevin. I'm like, I think we're getting Chris on the show. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm like, cool.
it was great. I really, really
Yeah,
appreciate that you
Yeah,
came on.
man. Well, that's all genuine though, Eric. And
yeah,
it's funny what as you get older, right? We naturally begin to kind of question our purpose, right? Why did the Lord give me the gift of life? And I truly believe that helping men in particular, but helping people in general, like is a calling for me. And this is very vast. It's not just within bodybuilding, but I have a business called Accountable Life where I do accountability coaching. And it's funny, it does of course have a training and nutrition element and things, because those are fundamental to learn discipline and process and maintaining accountability. But it's bigger than that is the point. And the cool thing about bodybuilding for people is those who have gone through it translates, it transfers into so many other great things into their life, being a better husband, a better father, a
yep,
better friend, and living a better life, right? From a godly perspective. That's my mission. I really do love to help people. And
great, yeah,
so like to your point, if this helps a couple people, right, have some new ideas and growth,
yep,
man, then we're on track, and hopefully we can continue that
of course,
just as our legacy in general.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
We'll help
Well,
each other.
Kevin,
Yeah.
I think it's time to let Chris go
Yeah,
get
let him
on
go.
to
I
other
think
things. He probably has a meal he's got to get in because he's got to grow for the
Yeah,
22nd
certainly do.
Olympics.
he's ready for his
Man, you
third
guys are
meal.
awesome.
Yeah, the third meal. Yeah.
Thanks,
You're
guys,
awesome,
for
Chris.
having me on.
So-
I'm really grateful, and let's keep in touch. I'll shoot you my phone number, and then feel free to share it with Kevin. And then if I can help out in any way with anything, of course, never hesitate to ask
Hey,
us.
me too. If you have anything you want to bounce off me, I mean, I'd love to help you in any way, shape, or form. And I want to see you be your best. So yeah, get me your phone number. Let's keep in touch, and then let's get you
Awesome.
back on the show in a few months and see where you're at.
Okay.
Love it, man. I look forward to it.
So that's
All right.
it for today, and we'll see you guys next week. Supposedly, we have
I have another guest, a big
we
guest.
have another cool guest. So we'll see. So that's
All
it.
right.
I'll be there watching.
Yeah.
All right,
Awesome,
Chris.
guys.
Take care. Have a
See you
great day,
guys.
buddy.
Be well.